Hey everyone, it's Jason. Welcome to a video about Smash Up. So if you're a fan of the community, you probably already know this, but if not, um, they've done a bunch of errata to the cards, to various cards, as well as they're doing some faction rebalances, which are reprints of ones that have more than a couple cards. So they're just going to redo the entire faction and fix some errors, or maybe change some of the cards, make them better, mostly power them up, maybe some depowering. Um, and they're working with Forge Fire Connect to do direct on print, or print on demand, I guess is the correct term, to reprint every single faction separately, as well as these errata packs. And we'll look at those. That's this video is going to be about, is the errata packs. So we're going to look at kind of what the differences in each one were, so you kind of see an idea if you're like, should I pick this up? Do I need to pick this up? You'll have an idea of what's different from the old card to the new card. Yeah, so then the idea is with this Forge Fire and the print on demand packs is, if you want to get any single or one or two factions, you don't have to go buy the full box. You can have them printed out straight from the company. Just one thing to keep in mind with this, and I'm not going to get too much into the print on demand for this video, but just to keep in mind that if you get these, since they're printed in a different way than the mass manufacturing that the full box sets are, is they don't have the plastic dividers with them. So they have a little card with them that kind of helps divide them, but they don't have the full big plastic divider. As well as they might be slightly different size and color, just based because they're not using the exact same process as they did for the full sheets. They're being done in a different way. But it is neat. The fact is, yeah, if you really like, you don't want to buy let's say Awesome Power 9000, but you really wanted like one of the things from it. Or you didn't want to buy the Monster Smash Up, but you really just wanted werewolves. You can just buy werewolves now. So it's a cool way for people to be able to pick and choose which ones they might want. Might pertain to maybe some of the later ones when you're getting into like the ones that maybe have like some of the more IP-ish theming stuff, like the ones that had like superheroes and Star Wars, Star Trek references, or the newer ones that have like the 80s TV series, like the He-Man, Ninja Turtles, or stuff like that. You might pick, oh, I want that specific one, but I don't want all of them. So it is a neat idea to do for people that would like to collect some here and there, but don't think they need to have, 100 different factions of cards. So it's a cool idea. But we want to look at the errata stuff in this video. So Forest Fire is selling 3 different packs currently right now. They're selling most of the non-rebalance factions, which I'll go over which ones they are in just a minute. But most of the other ones they are reprinting. And then, like, if they ever fully reprint AEG, AEG fully reprints a set, they will have the new wordage in there if they ever do like a second reprinting of a set. But I think this is their way of maybe not having to keep reprinting sets and then find out, oh, nobody wanted that set, but maybe somebody really wanted some of it. But they have 3 different packs. They have the functional errata pack, the bases errata pack, and then the wording errata pack. So what kind of are these? So the functional, and this is just my definition of what these are, is kind of the functionals are going to be changes to how the card plays during the game. So these are actually going to be things that are, the card did this before, it now does this. It is going to change how you use the card. Maybe you used it in a combo, and it might be like, oh, I could use it this way, but now the card says once per turn, for example. It didn't specify that before. It might have been an understood thing, but it wasn't specified. So you'd be like, the card doesn't specifically say that, so I can do whatever I want. Some of them powered them up. They increased like the number of counters or the power thing. So before you might have gotten like a +1 out of it. Now you get a +2 counter. Or you might have been able to put 1 counter before. Now you can put 2 counters on. And the same idea, something like maybe more or less drawing. Majority of them are things that generally I think make the cards better. It took lots of the older sets So there's a lot more stuff from the earlier going into the later, and I think they boosted up the power to kind of fit with the level of the newer cards. They started getting like better special abilities or and things like that. There are a few that might seem like they're drawbacks because they say stuff again like once per turn, or they limit what you can do with it. But I think that's more minor. The bases errata pack is kind of a mix between the two of these, because it has stuff that is functional, but it also has a lot of wording stuff. But I think they put them separately, and lots of these are going to be like I have them kind of saying the comma errata, which falls for all of the cards. But the bases have a lot more stuff that fits in here. It's stuff like numbers are being changed into words. So if the card says like um, draw 2 cards, you'll use the word 2 instead of the number. And this is to separate it from adding +2 power counters, which uses the number. So if it wants you to add counters, it always uses a number. So they changed any other instance of older cards that would have said a word or a number into a word. Just that way you're not seeing the number 2 multiple times. And they added a lot of you may do these effects, which is very helpful. And this is for all the cards again. It might say something like an old card might have said place 3 counters on minions, and now it says you may play 3 counters on minions. So you're not being forced to. And I think a lot of this stuff is going to be with the wording change or the even the functional errata. Some of it might be, oh, I probably would have done that anyhow and played all 3 counters. So it's for the way you probably played it. It doesn't actually change how the card works. But the fact is, it's optional. There's like some that also say like up to, like you may play up to 3 cards, and you might be like, so I can play 0, 1, 2, or 3, versus, and most of the time you're probably just going to like play 3 cards or draw 3 cards. But the fact is, you have the option to do less, and there are times that might make a number, especially like you may place power counters down. Because you might decide, I don't want to break this base yet, but you played this card. Maybe you're forced to or something else. So that's kind of interesting. And then the word errata pack. This thing's more for fans that just want everything to kind of line up with the same terminology. And I do want to kind of make a little caveat on this. Is the idea of the word errata pack is just supposed to be like, it changes wordage to keep cards the same. It changes stuff like up to and instead, and it kind of clarifies that. When, there's stuff that says, when your character dies, instead it says if your character dies. Instead of being like it's a finality that's going to happen, it says, yeah, if it happens. Sometimes it just rearranges text to make it easier, or it fixed timing rules, which might be like, use this at the beginning of the turn or the end of the turn. Might have added that, might have gotten rid of some of that stuff just to make the card simpler. The whole idea of the word errata is the card functionally does not work any different than it did before. It has the exact same effects, they just changed how it works. And the other time I had a little bit of a caveat on there, and this sometimes happens with the keyword changes happening in both, is that if you are reading the card as it is written, or wrote on the card, and then now you look at how they changed it, you might be like, but now this card does something different. Or doesn't, or I can't use this loophole. And sometimes they're just fixing it to be like, this is how the card was intended to be made. This is what our intentions were when we wrote down these words, how we want it. We expected people to understand. You can only do this once per turn. Or, like, some of the keyword changes, they changed an ongoing ability into a special ability because of the timing on how an ongoing versus a special ability works. And you might be like, yes, but before that, because it was this, I could maybe exploit this one combo to do this, and now you can't do that. So there might be some stuff in there that changes enough if you're trying to exploit how the words were on the cards to get around things. So let's go ahead and take some of this. So here are the rebalance factions. So these will be the 10 factions that do not have any cards in these packs, because they're redoing enough of them that they decided it wasn't worth reprinting them, just in there to start over. Unfortunately, they don't. Like, I think Bear Cavalry is up on their website right now that you can print, but they don't have any list of what changed on it. And now this could be more bigger changes. So it's Bear Cavalry, Elder Things, Giant Ants, Mega Troopers, Miskatonic University, Penguins, Super Spies, Tricksters, Vampires, and Vigilantes. Now, I don't know if they're going to release like a giant 10-pack of all of these together, or if you have to buy each one individually. Currently, I think they're just going to release them as they finish them. Um, but this could actually be bigger stuff that gets changed on them. They could actually like eliminate cards out of there. Be like, yeah, we don't like this particular card anymore, or it didn't fit the theming as well as we thought it did, or something. They could change the power on minions. Um, Generally, the rest of the errata pack doesn't change any of the names or the powers of the characters. The minions, it just changes the abilities a little bit. And even then, they're not even typically very egregious. They're usually pretty small, but they do make a difference. This, they could functionally change a lot of stuff. And some of it could be also like copywriting things as well as that. I'm looking at stuff like possibly, not for sure, but possibly something like Vigilantes or Mega Troopers. Maybe even Super Spies, because we do a lot of homage stuff in Smash Up. So there could be something that maybe they could change a full card to something else because it didn't make sense. Even Bear Towers just be Russians on bears. Maybe they had to like change something because that's someone's like, oh, you had this card or this name and that's not correct, or maybe it's I know like example there would be Vigilantes is they changed hideout to back alley for the base, because not because it's offensive or anything, but because there was already a card called hideout in a different set. Um, but that's definitely one thing they did change in there. Alright, so let's hop in here. I just want, before we jump into actual cards, keyword reminder. This is always one thing that sort of trips me up when I'm like looking over all these cards. There's three main keywords on cards. There's ongoing, which are always on abilities. These actions, they're active as long as those cards are on the field. They're doing something. They're gaining a bonus to something. Or they're reducing the break point, or something like that. There are special abilities which are reactive. The ability that can trigger while the card is not in play. This might be from your hand, could be on the field. So it usually takes form of playing a card from your hand or discard pile under some specific circumstances. Also, an ability that triggers during score basis phase. So these are ones that basically sit on the field and they don't do anything until something happens. Like when a base scores, special, you can do this ability. Or this sits there and it might be like, if somebody destroys one of your minions, this card is special. Now you can play that card to do its thing. And then talent are activated abilities. These are ones that have to be active during your turn while the card is in play. I'm only bringing these up because there's a lot of the errata cards will switch some of these. Some ongoing abilities became special. Some specials became ongoing. Some specials became talents, or ongoings became talents. And they kind of switched them around because they might have just had special like listed on there, and it was supposed to actually be an ongoing ability, or vice versa. So it's kind of nice to just know where these all work. Alright, so we're going to jump into the functional errata pack first, which we're going to do the main cards, then the Titans, then we're going to do the base pack, and then we're going to do the wordage errata. So if you want to jump to it, you can jump to the big colored slides that I'm going to be showing off if you want to know where the next part is. So one thing to also keep in mind here is this does say it contains 84 faction cards, 5 Titans, and a product information card. This pack includes every faction card and Titan that is not included in a rebalance faction, which we just talked about. But have a note on here. There's only 51 different faction cards with multiple cards. It does say you're getting 84 faction cards. And I think this is one of the things that sort of, like when people kept asking, like, what's in these packs? How do they work? What's this? Is the people responding for Smash Up just kept saying, oh, there's 84 faction cards. Oh, so I'm getting 84 cards out of the, like, how many different factions there are. No, you're getting 51 different cards over, I think, probably like, maybe it might be like 40 different factions. I don't remember the exact amount. I didn't write that one down. Because some factions have 2 or 3 cards um, in each thing. Some have 1, which is fine too. But yeah, but then like some of them, like, oh, you have a minion that's like your 2-power minion that had 4 versions of a card. You're getting all 4 versions of that card. So that's why these 51 cards eventually add up to the 84 cards. So that's just something to keep in mind. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and look through. So what I did is on the left side, I have a picture of the original card. The right side in text is what the Fireforge website has specifically. This is what they wrote down. So if something is wrong in here, that's because they wrote it down on their website. They did not have new images out, and I have not bought the cards to show the difference. Maybe I might do that in a future video if, or when I eventually get the upgraded cards, whether it's through that or if I order them through the actual website. And then in the top right corner, I just have the faction and their name in case you're curious what site it's from. Of course, All Stars is one of those ones where it has stuff from every different set. So prepare for battle, it's an action. And I tried to do is highlight what the main differences were. Now, obviously, the functional errata are going to have a little bit more differences than just the highlighted, but this is a big idea. So, like, I'm going to kind of try and go through these without rereading every single part of every card. If you want, feel free to pause on each one if you want to take a bit better look at them. But yeah, so for Prepare for Battle, it says, now we're revealing the top 3 cards instead of 2. And you're drawing 2 of them and returning the other. It says, otherwise it originally said, place 1 into your hand and the other on the bottom of your deck. So it does change, because you get 3 cards instead of 2, and now you get to draw 2 of them. So you're actually getting to keep 2 cards instead of 3, instead of, so you're getting 1 extra, negating 1 extra card. And then also you put them on the guy highlight at the top or bottom of your deck. So it's actually a little bit, definitely a better card. And this is from Astronites, as you can see. So when we get to the Astronites card, we'll see the exact same card with the different artwork. For Anasazi Tales, we have only the Python. I did put, like, if it's a minion or a power, all of those stay the same. So all the power and all the characters all stay the same no matter what. But this does have a couple of choices. One of these, again, is the you may place 1+1 counter, and it does say on one of your minions. So it has the option to place one, and it does say on one of your minions. So it gives you the option to put it on something else other than itself, which is kind of functionally makes it a better card. You can still put it on itself, and it's played the exact same way, but you could put it on something else. And then I love, again, the may, because there could be a time where it's like, oh, if I put a counter on this thing, I'm going to break the base. Or someone might have put a card down that says, if another minion on here has 5 power, they get to destroy it, right? So maybe you don't want to put one on there. You can still put this down as a 4-cost minion. You just don't have to put the counter on this guy and then functionally have them destroyed immediately, but you still get your creature out. So that's why sometimes the May effects would be very helpful. We have Mummy Strength for Ancient Egyptians. This just ups from 3 power to 4 power, so very nice. Again, just some of these are very simple. They're not, again, like they didn't delete all the text and restart each card over, but having 1+ power can make a big difference, using this card. And some of that might be for certain people, might be whether or not they played the card or not. We have Astro Robot for the Astronites. Just changes, says you may destroy an action card played on the space or a minion here. Again, adding the you may. Now, again, if this was just an action card, having a May ability doesn't make any sense because you just don't play the card. But I like the fact that I could play Astrobot because with the old card, it says Astrobot says you destroying action played on a space or a minion here. If you play it on a thing that only has your stuff, you have to destroy your stuff. because that's what the card says. Adding the you may, and that's just the idea. Is I think functionally they intended the card to be like, destroy someone else's stuff. Like, why would you play it and destroy your own stuff? But because it doesn't say it's an optional thing in the original version, there were people that probably said, nope, this says you have to destroy one. So if yours is the only one there, you have to do it. And this especially comes from people playing games like Magic the Gathering, and older games like other card games like that, where it says it does 6 damage to creatures on the field, and your opponent doesn't have enough creatures to take 6 damage, then you have to assign it to your creatures. It doesn't care. It just has to deal all 6 of that. That's the same idea here. So I like that they add the May abilities. For laser swords, just ups it to +2 instead of +1. Definitely helpful. Makes it a little bit better card. Might make it worth playing. And here's Prepare for Battle again, which we saw earlier. Cesium Armor for Changer Bots. Again, adds us up to +2. So it's very simple. That's all it does in there. Just makes it a little bit better card. I think, again, it's just to help make these in line with maybe some of the newer stuff, or maybe they found they were too weak and people weren't playing them. We have Pinker King for the Cowboys. Now, this just adds a kind of there's a lot of stuff like this. It can be once per turn, once per duel. So it says, so ongoing, it says once per duel, whenever it remains in a duel, place a 1 counter. So normally it just says whenever a minion here is in a duel, you just always place it on there. This just now says once per duel, which I think, again, is basically understood. With the idea being when one of your minions in a duel, it gets a +1 counter. But the idea of saying once per duel means every time they duel, they have to add a new counter. I think it works the exact same. It's just sometimes it's that timing rule that does make a difference. That way, someone was probably trying to find a way to exploit this amongst outside of the once per duel. I don't know how they were doing it, but I'm sure there's someone that was figuring out a way. For dinosaurs, we have Armored Stego, which it went from ongoing to talent. It says until the start of your turn, this minion has +2 power during other players' turns. So originally it's ongoing. So ongoing is an active ability, meaning that it always just had +2 power during other players' turns, which made perfect sense. Turning it into a talent is kind of like a May ability. You have to activate this now, and then so on your turn you can activate a talent, and then now till the start of your next turn, which is through all your other players' turns, it has its +2 power. So it does the exact same thing, with the one exception. Now you have to decide to turn it on, versus it just always has it on. And again, I think it could kind of add the May ability in there in case maybe you didn't want to give it the extra power. You wouldn't have to. We have Laser Tops. It says here, you may destroy a minion here of printed power 2 or less. This is another thing they added a lot of. It just says has to have a printed power versus just a power of 2 or less. Again, very minor, but this is potentially somewhat a debuff, because you might have another card somewhere else that says, "Oh, give a card -2 power this turn." So if it was a 4, and you gave it -2 power, you can't destroy it with this card, because it only can destroy things of 2 or less. But I think it's kind of trying to theme it into the idea is it's like it can only destroy something of 2 or less power normally. It doesn't want to do something that you've weakened that much. So Tooth, Claws, and Guns. This one just adds other players' cards. So it changes the bottom. It says destroy this card. It actually changes a couple of things. It says play a minion ongoing. This minion is not affected by the player's card. It says, ongoing, if an ability will affect this minion, destroy this card, and the ability does not affect this minion. So first of all, you don't have to destroy this card. Like, that's great. So it's that's, like, again, it's one of those things where it's like, is this card fun to play? I play it once, and it takes one hit and it's gone. Now it's a permanent thing. Um, but it just also says if an ability would affect this minion, now it's just other players' cards. Um, but that's also something that does change as well, though. Because the original one also said, if any ability would affect this minion, anyone's ability. So you could not buff up a guy once they had this card on. You couldn't do anything. So this kind of became it's kind of a bad card to begin with, which is why it's great they changed it. Because if you played it, basically, yes, your opponent couldn't touch it unless they wasted your card on it, but you also couldn't touch it either. So now when you play it, it's hey, your opponent can't touch it. I gave this thing a bunch of armor and guns and everything. Now just my opponent can't touch it, but I can still utilize its effects. So that's pretty cool. Because an ability would be like, what if they had a talent that said, oh, on your turn, use this talent to give it a +1 counter. If you gave it, the original one would have automatically destroyed that card. Which that would suck. But what if that was your option to play it, right? And again, sorry for some of the artwork on here. I got these from the wiki, rather than trying to pull my own collection, scan everything. It's just some are turned sideways like this, or aren't the best quality. But here we have Disco Dancers, Get Down Tonight. Yeah, so you still get your +2 power to the end of the turn, but you draw a card, but it's just added for each minion affected by this. Now, this is one of the unique things because it's actually trying to find ways to exploit the rules. It says give a minion +2 power. That's a minion +2 power. So you, functionally, 90% of the time you play this, you're still going to draw a card. But there are probably different combinations and effects with something else. It might say, if you do something to this minion, duplicate that effect to this other card. Now you've done it twice. Now you get to draw 2 cards. So it's kind of cool because it sets it up for potential combos that could happen in the future based on all those different sets. And this is the same idea here. I'm so excited. It says move one of your minions, draw a card for each minion affected by this. Again, this is kind of playing on the fact that if you have cards that are going to let you do things to multiple, now you're going to have multiple effects for drawing cards. And we have Roller. Now this is an interesting change they've done in here. Is after this minion is affected by a standard action. So they changed from directly affected by a standard action to just standard action. But they also did add the word standard action to a bunch of older cards as well, as opposed to an extra action. So it only counts like if it's someone's normal thing they're doing, which is kind of neat. I think they got rid of like words like directly affected by. It's just affected by. Sometimes it's just cleaning up the text a little bit. And then it also says you may place 2, and now again they use the word 2 instead of the number 2 because it's immediately followed by the number 1. Just so it doesn't get confusing to see the number 2 and then the number 1. So it just gets a little bit more powerful. For Explorers, we have Glory Hound. So again, you get your 2 cards with a top cards of the base deck. But now you're returning to the top and or bottom of the deck in any order. And the other one says, place 1 on the top of the deck and the other at the bottom. So this is, again, it's kind of an upgrade, but functionally it might not change too much depending on how you were using it. But now if you look at the top 2, you could place both on the top. Hey, I like the order of them. Both on the bottom. I hated both of them. Instead of before, you had to do 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. It just gives you that extra option of either keeping both or getting rid of both. So it's definitely a nice upgrade. X never marks the spot. So each became any number of your minions. And this is, again, like a May effect. And that's why they added in there, which I really love. Because each means you have to move every single one of your minions on the board. Where any number means if I have 5, I could move 1. I could move 0 if I really wanted. It'd be dumb to play this to move 0, but maybe you have something that triggers it, who knows. But yeah, just the fact it gives you more of the option of what to do is helpful. Alright, for fairies, we have Leaf Armor. This one actually has a big change on it. So you're still playing on the minion, but now it's said, instead of ongoing, this minion has +1 power. And then it has talent, transfer this action to another minion. It changed it functionally so that the ongoing is giving it the talent. So it doesn't just have the talent normally, which makes sense. But now the talent says, give this minion +2 power till the end of turn. Versus transferring it to another. So this actually completely changes how the card works. This is one of the few times where you might actually decide to keep the original versus the other. Now, if something went from +3 power to +4 power, or drawing 2 cards and now drawing 3 cards, you're probably going to keep the upgraded version. It's obviously just a powered up version. This functionally is a different card. Because the original one says your minion has +1 power. So as long as this is on a minion, it always has +1 power. Your turn, your opponent's turn, no matter what. And then you have the talent to move this armor to another minion. So you can transfer that +1 power around. The new one got rid of that transferring. You do not have the ability to transfer this at all. It does boost its power to +2, but now it's only till the end of your turn. So you don't get that bonus on your opponent's turn anymore. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's an extra little +2 during all of your turns, but you can't get rid of it, and you can't use it on your opponent's turn. I'm surprised it doesn't say until the start of your next turn, which would functionally give it through your opponent's turn, like the Stego did, would have made more sense. We have Playful Tricks for the fairies. Well, this has a little bit of a big change on it. So it changes the number 2 to the letters to the word 2. So that's a functional. That's a word change. That doesn't change how the card works. But it added or play Spirit of the Forest, which is the Titan. This is because this is one of these cards that came after the original Titan pack was created, and added the Spirit of the Forest card. So that's kind of fun. I was honestly surprised. I think this is the only card that added something that interacts with their Titan. Because the one Japan set that originally introduced the Titans, a bunch of their cards actually interacted with their Titans, and then they added the Titan pack by itself. There wasn't any cards of the previous sets that would have interacted with them because they're obviously created afterwards. This would have been a great way to add some of these extra cards that would have done that. And again, some of the rebalance packs might do that as well, because there are some Titans in there, like for vampires and stuff like that. For grannies, we have added treasures. So now it says, instead of placing 3 cards from your hand to the bottom of your deck, you can place up to 3 cards. So again, 0, 2, 3. And then you draw that many cards. So instead of for sure having to get rid of 3 cards to draw 3 cards, now you can be like, oh, I have 3 cards in my hand, but I need to keep one of these. Now you can get rid of 2 and draw 2 cards. So again, lots of times you might just discard the 3 cards. Not discard them, put them at the bottom of your deck. And draw 3 cards, and you're going to play it the exact same way, but the fact is you have options now is really good. For Kaiju, we have Radioactive Breath. Which just does have a power level on it. I didn't put that on there, the 3. I assumed it stayed the same. I don't recall it changing at all. But now it says, instead of destroy all minions you don't control, it says destroy any number of minions here of power 2 or less. So this again changes to the fact that you can choose which ones to destroy, and you can destroy your own as well. So like we had some where it's like, oh, I have the option not to destroy my stuff. Here it's giving you the option to destroy your stuff, which might be beneficial for certain reasons. Certain classes might, you might gain a bonus if you can destroy one of your cards, like use your talents. So that's kind of helpful. Um, and the fact is, it's any number. There might be reasons not to destroy one of your opponents. Maybe your opponent has a thing that says, oh, if this guy's destroyed, I get to destroy any one of your minions as well. Like, oh crap, well I don't want to lose a 7-cost minion because I destroyed their 2-power guy, right? So now you have the option of just not to destroy certain characters. So that's very cool. I also have the Folly of Men for Kaiju. Slight change on here. It says your minions and other actions on this base cannot be destroyed. So before it said your minions and actions here cannot be destroyed. And they did a lot of this too, where they changed here to on this base. Obviously, you'd assume that if you're playing it on the base, here refers to that base, but just clarifying that text is super helpful. And that's all it did. So, this is one they probably could have almost put in the just word errata and not necessarily functional. But since it actually does change it, I guess. Yeah, cool. Alright. Then we have the Weed Eater. Now, this one's a massive change to the card. Just like the Fairy Armor. You may decide to keep the original or use a new one. The only thing you have to keep in mind with any of these things, if you're playing a tournament, they may require you using the updated text. I don't know how that would work, because that's not, how that works for a board game where you have to go and buy stuff as opposed to like a trading card game. But because this one, the original says, this minion has -2 powers the turn you play it. So it's a 5-power character, but the first turn you play it, it's at 3. It's just a little bit weaker, and then it grows to 5 after that. And then any time after that first turn, it's 5. So it's really powerful. This one changes. This is a few times the power changed. It changed it to power 3. And it says, ongoing at the start of your turn, this minion gains +2 power at the start of your next until the start of your next turn. So this actually functionally works the exact opposite. It comes out with 3 power with so at the start of your turn, gains +2 power. So it gains power afterwards. It starts off as a 3 like this one does. But then every turn, because obviously the ongoing is the start of your turn. You've already played it, so the start of your turn doesn't happen. So it's still a 3. But then after that, every single time you play it, it's always going to have 5. So it does basically do the same thing, but the fact is its initial power is now 3 and not 5. Means that it can be hit by certain things that other things can't hit it by. So it's just interesting. But they also made an ongoing ability. So it's after you have it in play. If you're just looking at the power amount, it's always going to be 5. No matter what. So at the start of your turn, it gains 2 power till the start of your next turn. And at the start of your turn, it'll start back over and get its 2 power back up to 5. The only difference is if there's some way to shut that off, they might have a way to do that. For kitty cats, we have Mr. Grumpers. Says, you may give a minion -2 power until the start of your next turn. So again, the option of you may do it, you do not have to. So you might just want to play it as a minion by itself. And then the start of your next turn. So it says until the end of your turn means I play this till the end of my turn at whatever character has -2. So the start of my turn means now they have it through every opponent's turn as well. So it just lengthens the effect out, which I think is a really good idea. It makes it a lot more of a useful card. For Magical Girls, we have Celestial Teleport. This one changed a lot too. So it says play on one of your minions, and then it gives it the talent to move this minion to another base. So it makes this character have reusability. Before, the action was just a one and done. Move your minion somewhere else. But now you can play it on one of your minions, and they can do this repeatedly, which I think is, again, just an upgrade to the card. The minion of Cthulhu, we have the Altar to Cthulhu. It says changed it to an ongoing, and then it says once per turn after you play a minion here, you may play an extra action. So whenever you play a minion here, you may play an extra action that turn. So kind of functionally again, um, it works the same way. After you play a minion here, you may play an extra action. But it just says once per turn after you play a minion here, you may play an extra action. So it just limits it how it does. I think part of this might have been maybe someone was dropping a bunch of cards. Now, I think the thing is just to keep in mind here is this isn't saying only once per turn can you use this effect. It's saying once per turn after you play a minion here, you may play an extra action. Yeah, I think the idea is to stop you from abusing this too much. Alright, let's move on. We have Mounties, we have War Canuck, who changed from ongoing into a talent. So this is ongoing. So if there's another player's minion here, this minion has +1 power. So this is saying if there's somebody else here, this always has +1 power. This is an always effective ability. Instead, they changed it to a talent that you have to activate. It says if there's another player's minion here, this minion gains +2 power till the start of your next turn. So it still affects another players there, but instead of it always being on, just at the beginning of your turn, you have to activate this to give an extra power, of course, and that goes all the way through your opponent's turn. So it essentially does work as an ongoing once you activate it, but again, it's something you have to choose to do, which really brings in that whole May effect, because maybe you don't want to give it that +2 for some reason. Otherwise, again, you're being forced to give it a +1 no matter what. Again, if there's a base or an ability that says if any minions over 4 power are destroyed, here you'd be forced, all your opponent has to do is play a 2 minion, boom, you're destroyed. Now you have the option to not activate that ability. One of the badge calls, this changes a bunch. You just kind of have it highlighted. Some of it's also just rearranged. So it still says special, play before a base scores. And again, as you looked at very early on, specials are ones that have reactionary effects. So this ability does not trigger until a base scores. So it sits in your hand until a base scores. To be able to do it. And it says, place a +1 counter on each of your minions on one base. So this is, each of your minions there gains +1 power till the end of the turn. Now, I think the other thing that kind of changes for us because they worded this the other direction is I could use this as an action to place a +1 power on each of your minions on a base. Boom, done. I don't have to do the special at all. I can just use this for an effect. But I have the ability to, if a base scores, or is going to score, I can place this instead. Because the way the original one made it sound, or the way it basically plays, is you can only use this as a special before a base scores. Now I think you have the option to do both, which makes it a much better card. Again, options. Mythic horses, we have Rainbow. So saying if you have another minion here, I highlighted the wrong word. I should have said the phase they have played. So if you have another minion here, draw a card. Versus the other says if you have played another minion here, draw a card. So again, I think they just got rid of the word played because playing would mean like I have to activate this ability only after I have played another card that turn, as opposed to now the current way says, or the new way says, if I have something there already, I can activate it. It's a timing issue. I think originally they intended for it to be played, just meaning, if there's already another minion there. But because it says played, in the original, it makes it sound like I have to play a card on there that turn, then I can activate this ability, which is, I don't think, what they wanted. Sharing power changes at the start of your turn to at the end of your turn, and it changes the number 2 from the letter to the words. Um, so this one is an odd one, I think, because at the end of your turn, if you have 2 or more minions, so you draw a card, versus at the start of your turn. So what's the first thing is, when I play this, I'm going to get to use it on the turn I play it. So I at least get the effect of it before someone has a chance to destroy it. And I think the other reason why they did this, one, survivability. Otherwise, you play a card, it's a dead card for the turn then, until the start of your next turn when it becomes active. Because then you just start doing stuff. Plus the fact that drawing a card during your turn means now your opponents are playing. You have the option to see what your card does. Potentially use it during their turn if it's something that scores on a base, something like that. Excuse me. Or it lets you at least see the card and get used to what the card does, so you know when you're going to play it next turn. Additionally, again, it's the fact that you get more chances. You get to use it on your turn, as well as now you don't have to hope that your opponent destroys this action or destroys one of your minions. And again, if either of those happened in the original version, I wasted my turn playing this card because it doesn't do anything till my next turn. And if they destroy it or one of those minions, or enough so I don't have 2 or more minions, again, the card's going to sit there and be dead or wasted again. So I basically lost the effect completely. So here it at least gets you potentially 1 card no matter what. Unless, again, you played this on a spot that doesn't have 2 minions and you're waiting until a future turn for that, which you could do as well. For ninjas, we have Infiltrate. Playing a base, you may destroy another action on this base. Instead of forcing you to destroy it, you have the option. This, again, is to prevent you from having to destroy your own stuff. And on the bottom, it changes an ongoing into a talent, which says, you may ignore this base's ability till the start of your next turn. It says, destroy this action to cancel this base's ability until the start of your next turn. So this actually is a big change, because originally it says, just anytime this card is out, you can ignore the base's ability to the start of your next turn, which really isn't an ongoing effect. That's a triggering effect. You have to do something, so at least that should have at bare minimum always been a talent, because it's doing something until the start of your next turn. Or it should have said, ongoing, at the start of your next turn, ignore this, until the start of your next turn, ignore this base. But it shouldn't have been a you may. It should have been a forced ability if it's an ongoing. Ongoings aren't optional. But yeah, this does actually change. This is destroy this action to cancel this base's ability. So it actually kind of weakens it, but it lets you use it when you want to. But I think the original idea of the card was you play this card, and then destroying action has been placed here. And the idea was, it's kind of like you could destroy this action that you just placed on this card to do that. But the thing is, the original one, you want to keep that there. So yeah, very interesting. Kind of very big change. We have Smoke Bomb. Now this one I didn't highlight anything. Why didn't I have it? Because it changes a ton. They did fix ninjas a little bit. So it says, play on one of your minions stays the same. It says, ongoing. This minion is not affected by other players' actions. So those two stay the exact same. But then the bottom of the original, it says, destroy this card at the start of your turn. This is the thing that changed. You do not have to now destroy this card at the start of your turn. So yeah, kind of like the opposite of Infiltrate. Kind of makes it work a little bit better. Saucy Wench is the only card that is not part of a Rebalance pack that I know of that changed its name. So instead of being Saucy Wench, it is now Cut Lass. And I think that's just like maybe PG-13 it a little bit more. But it does change an effect on there as well. You may destroy a minion here of 2 power or less instead of just on this base. And I think they changed, instead of stuff saying on this base, to here, assuming you know that here is where that minion is. Yeah, but very minor change. We have the Buccaneer, who changed from a special, again, which is like a triggering mechanic, to an ongoing. Once per turn, if this minion be destroyed, you may move it to another base. It's before it's like, if this minion would be destroyed, move it to another base, which is the exact, again, it's triggering. If it was destroyed, you can move it. Now let's just change it to an ongoing once per turn. I think the idea of doing that was, again, kind of so you don't abuse this with different effects. Because the original one would be if it be destroyed, move it to another base. So, gets destroyed, move it to another base. Gets destroyed, move it to another base. Gets destroyed, move it to another base. And you could do that infinitely as many times as you could destroy it, which could trigger other effects, like when they get moved. Here it's just saying, if this gets destroyed, you may move it, but only once on your turn. So you can't abuse this by doing it 3-4 times during a turn. If it gets destroyed a second time, they've destroyed it. We have 4 princesses. We have Fairy Godmother. Let you draw 2 cards instead of 1 card. Or get a +3 instead of a +2. Just a power boost. Nothing wrong with that. Make the Fairy Godmother better. And for Griselda, we have, instead of placing a card, it's just place an heirloom card from your discard pile into your hand. It says draw a heirloom from your discard pile. I think I'm not really. I think it's the only time I've ever seen the word place and draw exchanged, and maybe it's just because placing sounds like it comes from your hand, where I think they're saying draw it from your discard pile. But it does add or play a heirloom as an extra action. This actually functionally makes it a better card as well, because before it was. Because you're drawing it to your hand, which is the same thing the original card did, but now it's also given the option to play it as an extra action, in case you didn't have something in your draw pile. That way it's not doing anything. For Samurai, we have Ronin. If this is your only minion, you get 2 counters instead. Very simple. Coded Bushido, this card gets a major boost. Place 3 +1 counters on your minions. It's actually functionally the same card. This is place a +1 counter on up to 3 of your minions. Just now place 3 total counters on your minions. Just actually like where I kept saying I love the May ability. It actually changes that. Because now you're being forced to place 3 counters. So it functionally does the same thing. Placing 3 counters on your minions, but the fact is it's changing it to now you're talking about taking 3 counters and distributing them, as opposed to saying I'm taking a +1 counter and putting it on up to 3 of my minions. The idea of the original one, you can see where someone could get confused and thinking, I have a +1 counter I have to somehow put on up to 3 of my minions. But if I have a counter, I can only put it on 1 minion. And here it's just making sure I understand it's 3 of them. We have for the sheep, we have shearing. Play on your minion changes to play on a minion. Otherwise, it does all the same stuff. And just kind of change some of the bonds. If at the start of your turn, return this to your hand. Other one says return this to your hand at the start of your turn. Just kind of rearranges that, but it does the same thing. But yeah, again, being able to play it on any character versus just your own is always nice. Again, like lore-wise, it makes sense you're shearing your own sheep. But again, if I'm playing sheep aliens don't really have anything for me to shear. Wood for sheep. To play a reveal card, otherwise return it and play an extra card. So this has a lot of different text on there. So it says you may place a card from your hand into their hand. And that all stayed the same, but then originally it said, play the revealed card as an extra card, otherwise return it. Here it just says you may place a card from your hand into their hand to play the revealed card. Done. So do that. If you do it otherwise, return it to play and play an extra action. So it's actually making this a little bit better, because before it just said, here's a revealed card. Either play it as an extra card for your turn, or put it back. And here it's saying, if you put it back, you get another action anyhow. So you're not wasting your card doing nothing. So if you drew a card that, it says, this says, you can only play minions of two power or less. I don't have any minions that are 2 power or less. Therefore, that card's completely useless to me. Here at least gives you the option of doing stuff. For Star Roamers, we have Medical Officer. Ongoing says change if becomes when. So this is another big thing I kind of mentioned early on. You've only seen up till now, but I think it happens more in the wordplay one. But it's not if another one of your minions to be destroyed, it's when. Kind of just an inevitability. It says return to your hand. Instead of being destroyed, it said if one more to be returned to your hand, you may draw cards instead of returning one of them. This actually changes completely how the card works, though. Oh, I didn't even notice that. They did actually change the power of this from 3 to 4. Unless I mistyped that, which is very possible. But yeah, this one changes. It says if one of your minions would be destroyed, you may return it to its owner's hand. Yeah, instead it says one of your minions will be returned to your hand. So it gets rid of the destroyed part and it just changes to a bouncing. And it says you may draw a card instead of returning one of them. So very cool. But it also affects that anytime one or multiple of your characters. So again, this could be one where you could argue either way. You might want to keep the old one, keep the new one. Again, I'm not sure how they work with that. If you're playing a group of friends and not a tournament, definitely ask them like, hey, can I play? Do I have to play with all the errata? Can I mix and match them? Check that kind of stuff. A weird new world. So I highlighted everything because it changes very much. Although I think it stays a lot of the same. So it just says play the top base from the base deck. Play this card and an extra minion on it. It says basically play a new base, you may play an extra minion there. So it's basically functionally the same things. But it says ongoing when the next base scores, do not replace it and destroy this card. So here's the only thing it does is it does not destroy it. It gets rid of that ongoing ability. Yeah, so the next base scores, do not replace it and destroy this card. And I wonder if part of that isn't a saying, oh, you wouldn't destroy that. Is it saying that I think it's going back to the base rules are more or less supposed to be like, you're supposed to have 3 bases at the beginning of the game, for example. Like let's just say that's what it was. If you ever have more than 4 and you get, if as you add extra, you don't ever replace that. You only replace back to as long as you have the minimum amount. So if you ever get cards that add 2 or 3 or 4 extra bases, you don't replace them unless something would say that. And I think that's part of the newer rule set. And this is just saying, hey, the rules, the overall core rules are saying if I'm supposed to have 3 bases from the beginning of the game, at the end of the round, if I have to draw, like replace bases, I only replace up to 3 bases. So they just got rid of it off the basic cards, because why have an extra card for a rule that should always be in play? For sumo wrestlers, we have Rookie Sumo. Just replaces 2 counters instead of 1, so it's a power upgrade. The Bear Picnic for teddy bears. If other players can play minions they own of a printed power 2 or less here, they cannot play them on other bases. So if other players cannot play minions they own of power 2 or less on other bases. So this is it's just basically the same text. They just kind of changed how it's worded. If another player can play a minion they own of a printed power 2 or less here, they cannot play them on other bases. So basically saying if they have a minion of 2 power that they could play, they have to play them. It's not even saying, it's not forcing them to play them here. As long as if they can play them here, they can't play them somewhere else. They'd have to play them there versus somewhere else. But the fact that it changes to if they can play them, because you could have another effect down there that says, there's another action card that says you cannot play minions of 2 or less cannot be played on this base. So function if you have both of them, means no one could play minions of 2 or less. Which the original one would allow you to still have to figure out how to debate with that rule. Yeah, so very interesting. We have Fun Bear. You may place a +1 counter. Again, you're just not being forced to do it. Nothing too spectacular there. Wormhole for the time travelers. After a base scores with your special, shuffle any number of your minions there into your deck. So shuffle your minions there into your deck instead of placing a discard pouch. This is another big change they did with a lot of stuff, is it got rid of the mention of when cards go away, instead of the discard pile. And I think the idea there was, this is my speculation, is they got rid of saying instead of putting that instead of the discard pile, because they might go somewhere else. There are cards that when they're destroyed or removed go back to your hand. They might go back to your opponent's deck or discard pile or whatever. And so by instead of saying the discard pile, it's like, well, whose discard pile? My discard pile? All cards always go back there. But what if the card says it goes somewhere else? This is just saying, nope, this is just going to your deck, regardless of where else it could have went. Because it might not tell you to put it there, so it's like, well, rather than having you then debate whether it should have went one place or the other, we're like, it just don't worry about it. It doesn't need to know it could have went in the discard pile, because this is what you're dealing with. You're just shuffling it into your deck. And it's also the difference there is any number of your minions versus all your minions. So again, you could pick and choose which ones you want. So if you have 4 minions on there, you might not choose to put them all back into your deck for some reason. Maybe something like, I want to say, Ghost, which would work better in your discard pile. Might want to just get rid of them. Again, I think that's also, I'm going to flip back up. Also, I think that's core rules, is, like we said, the multiple bases. After a base scores, anything that's on there normally just get discarded. So why have to reiterate on a card specifically what the global rules are saying? For truckers, we have Hotwire. Playing action cards can be played off the top of your deck. So it says choose an action played on a base, transfer it to another base, or take control of it. And it just adds into the trucker's ability to put cards back on top of your deck. So it says choose an action played on a base, transfer it to another base, or take control of it. So that's the same exact thing, but it's adding in the extra ability that you can play actions on top of your deck, which works well with the trucker's ability. It just makes this a stronger card. Whoops. Because then we have like this one right here that kind of works with that. It says, give one of your minions +1 power till the end of the turn for each action on its base. So it has a new ability. So the more actions on your base, your minions get boosted power. Otherwise, the bottom part stays the same. Cool. For Vikings, we have Berserk. Just ups from 3 power to 4 power. And then we have World Champs, which is the second like all-star type team. It's blitzing time. It says ups from 3 power to 4. Now I did put in the bottom here, it says the Mega Troopers version is in the Rebalance faction pack, which is why I did not show it, much like the regular all-stars. We showed both of them. Prepare for Battle and the Astronauts. This one we didn't show it because the Mega Troopers version will only be in their update pack. Alright, now we're going to look at the Titans quick. Alright, so the Titans are also part of the pack. I just put them in a little separate thing because they're a little bit different. Now again, there's a reminder, if you get these as part of the print on demand, they're going to come in regular small card size. So this is going to be the only downside, the big downside about really getting these. Because they're like color changes, the card size could be negligible a little bit. Plus these sleeves, they might not be. But these are originally the big dividers. They're going to be in regular card size. So that's only the downside about that. I wish they would just re-release all the Titans in like one pack as a card size for that reason. But that's here nor there for this. So Cream Puff Man has a few changes. In his talent section, instead of discarding a card to play a standard action, just to play discard card to play as a standard action from your discard pile as an extra action. Place it on the bottom of your deck instead of discard. We just says choose a standard action in your discard pile. So I'm picking the card I want from my discard pile first. Now I can discard a card to play the chosen action as an extra action. Now, again, it realistically works the exact same way, but the reason why they changed it was because I'm sure there's people out there who were trying to abuse the way the words were in the order. Because the original says discard a card to play as a standard action. So I could discard card A originally, and I could choose that as my card to play as the extra action. Whereas now the new one, I have to choose card. If I choose card A that's in my discard pile, I have to discard card B to be able to use that. So it's not letting you discard and then play that card for free. Which, again, I think most people, if they're used to playing games, is the discarding is part of the cost, and you usually can't. It doesn't hit the discard pile until the cost is done. Until the effect is done. That's how Magic would work. But again, someone could literally read this card and say, well, it says this, and that's how you could play it. For Dagon, very small thing. Talent, playing extra minion, you have to play an extra minion here on whatever base he is on. It's a minor change, but it does make a big difference because it keeps you from... It makes you play guys on top of him, which is how his ability works. Otherwise, just playing extra minion means you can play him at any other place. So this does make a lot more sense. The killer, Kudzu. So in its special, it changes this. So start of your turn, Titan is not in place. You place a +1 counter on it. On your turn, if this Titan has 3 or more counters on it, you may play it, keeping up to 6 counters on it. So all that stays the same, but they added, instead of your regular minion play. So it just changes it. If you're playing this thing, it counts as you playing a minion for the turn. So you don't get to play this and play an additional card as well. It's kind of a nerf, almost. The Kraken, just on the bottom for its talent here, has other players' minions there get -1 power until the start of your next turn. So you changed it from the end of the turn to the start of your next turn. So now it lasts all the way through your opponent's turn. So it moves to somewhere else. This lasts until the end, throughout your opponent's turn as well. So basically, it makes this a more threatening card. And the last Titan is the Great Wolf Spirit. It's ongoing, changes a little bit. It says, during your turns, your cards may use their talents in extra times. So first of all, it changes your cards here. So it has to be cards in the same spot as the Great Wolf, which makes sense. Just kind of like the thing of like, they're powerful, so make them only work in certain areas. Then it says, they can use it a second time. But also it adds, at the start of your turn, you may move this Titan to a base where you have more power than any other player. So this lets you, in addition, now you can move this guy around as much as you want. Because then that way you can, not as much as you want, but once per turn. If you meet that requirement. But then now you can boost up them abilities there. Alright, so let's look at the base Errata pack. This has a lot more non-functional and just word stuff, as opposed to functional things. But we're going to kind of look over these a little bit in depth as well, like we just did. There's 28 cards, and there's 28 in the set, because there's only one of each card. Alright, so we're going to Action Heroes. We have Jungle Camp. So I did list, below the text on the name, I have their breaking point as well as their scoring. Almost all of them stay the same. There are a few that do change, though. But a lot of these are going to have this part I've highlighted right now. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over it after this one. It says after this base scores, the effect is the same. It's just, again, this is kind of a clarification on timing. Because obviously when the winner may return one of their cards to their hand. I think in theory you know that's supposed to happen. When the base scores, that's how you find out who the winner is. But here it's just that way someone doesn't think, oh, the winner, well, I'm currently have the most power, so I am winging that area at the moment. But that's not what they're trying to say. They want to make sure you realize this only happens when the base scores. It breaks and it scores, not whoever currently has the most power on there and who is the winner at the time. Because technically, you can have 14 power on there and nobody else might have anything, so you are winning, but according to the rules, that doesn't mean anything until the base actually breaks. So again, we have a lot of these once. So like this one's a once per turn. After you play a minion here, you may play an extra minion of 2 or less power. And I think it's just the aliens got a little bit abusive in being able to play so many things. Each time a minion is played here, its owner may play an extra minion. So each time, so basically, if I play one minion, ideally you could play another one, then play another one, then play another one. They could keep combining into each other. This did also change the scoring to 3 instead of 4. For No Moon, we have destroy a random other base. For this base scores, destroy a random other base and replace it normally. It says before this base scores, place a random other base and all cards on it in the discard pile and replace it with the top card of the base deck. So it simplified placing a random other base and card into a discard pile to just straight destroy. Just simplified the text a little bit. Because again, if I think like per like overall global rules, if something's destroyed, it goes to the discard pile. It's just easier to say, yeah, destroy this versus the blah 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 blah. Cool. Time traveling car. After all bases scores. Again, I'm not going to get into too much of this because it stays basically the same thing. Yeah, one of their. It does also add. It does change a slight thing I didn't highlight. Their minions or actions here versus one of their cards. Very minor because I think though it just includes that instead of their cards because their cards could also include Titans. So I think that's just a minor thing in there. So Corral once per turn. So again, we're just adding that once per turn you can only do this, just so you can't abuse this too many times. For Primate Park after the base scores again, but it says a winner may return any number of their actions to their hand. So placing his or her actions played back into his or her hand. So again, just placing cards back into their hand is just return. Kind of just again simplifying that. But that's the non-functional, the word things they did also change. We're gonna start seeing here is his and her became their. I think 1 simplifies words on the card. 2 also just to get rid of the whole kind of gender thing on there. And I don't know why games don't just do this from the beginning. Either say their or player to player's hand or their hand, assuming that's thing. And I'm not trying to get into like, isn't about like a gender debate here. It's just, it's easier than reading his or her on a card all the time. Being like, yeah, back to their hand, yeah. Just simplified talk. That's how we talk as people. Alright, tar picks. So when a minion here would be destroyed for the first time each turn. So this is after each minion is destroyed here. Placed on the bottom of someone's deck. So they kind of changed the if and the when. So if something's destroyed, and after it's destroyed, it's now when it's destroyed. Just kind of simplifying that to the same thing. So if it becomes when, after becomes when, and also the first time each turn. After each time a minion is destroyed. When a minion here be destroyed for the first time each turn. So that way if you have one that has a resurrection ability, if you destroy it a second time, you don't get to keep triggering it. And that might be if maybe there was something again on the card that said, destroy any minion here of cost of 2 or less, and someone plays a minion of 2 or less there, and it keeps destroying it, right? You wouldn't get to use the effect 18 times. For Dragon Slayer, when the space scores and changes the number 3 to the letter 3. So more just simplified effects. Woodland Cottage for Grimm's Fairy Tales. You may search your deck. Just have search your deck for a minion. You may. You just have options now. Otherwise, stays the same. The ritual sites. I didn't label anything on this one because it changes enough. So after this base scores, all minions are shuffled into their owner's decks instead of their discard piles. So all minions here, again, just specifying it's this location. Otherwise, just saying all minions on it and here are kind of the same exact terminology, are shuffled into their owner's decks. And again, just get rid of the discard pile thing, because it's like if I'm shuffling their decks, I don't have to worry about the word discard pile. So it's a non-term at that point. The greenhouse, after this base scores and is replaced, then do this effect. Make sure it's deck for a minute on the base replacement. Just kind of getting timing thing. This base scores, it's replaced. Now you can do this effect versus do this effect. Oh, when do I do it? Oh, then when it replaces it. Cool Cat's Alley. Once on your turn instead of during turn. This is another thing they changed a bunch. More so on bases than anything else. But during your turn has become on your turn. And I think from a one standpoint, it's the exact same it's the exact same idea. But I think just mean during. I think just on your turn is on your turn is any time from the start to the end of your turn, which kind of makes sense the same as during. But I think during the time frame where on your turn means it's my turn as opposed to your opponent's turn, where during has a place. Like during this phase, during that phase, during this thing, where on your turn just means anytime. And that's just kind of the simplification on that. For Camelot, they added printed power of 4 or more. Just again, we saw this in one of the other cards earlier. Just change that, have a printed power as opposed to boosted up by other effects. Kind of nerfs it a bit, just so that way it's not hitting other cards, but sometimes you need to do that. The Golem Skullerb, does change its power up to 4, or its reward points, and it's just after the base scores. And again, I didn't highlight it, but there, his or her instead of there. Laboratorium changes a bunch. So the first minion here, each turn gets a +1 power. After the first time each turn a minion is placed here, its controller places a +1 power counter on it. Yeah, the first minion player says after the first time a minion is played here. So it's just after it's played, just again a timing thing. Each turn, for the first time each turn minion is played here. And again, that's the other little thing, is it's the first time it's played there. So first minion play here each turn. After the first time each turn a minion is placed here. Yeah, more or less the same, just kind of rearrange the text a little bit. For Kakuga, after the base scores and replaced, we saw that before. Polynesian Voyagers, we have Island Change. So after this base scores, which, newer card, we kept that new terminology, we had to change the rest of it. Play the top card of the base deck as an extra base, instead of replacing it with 2 bases instead of 1. Just, again, using the idea of extra base, versus 2 bases instead of 1. Just makes it simpler. We already know about playing extra decks, or playing extra cards, so using the word extra as an additional thing makes more sense. Beautiful Castle for the Princess, with a printed power of 5 or more. And I also think the idea of printed helps so you can look down at the card really quick and be like, oh, that card says 5. I don't have to now read its abilities, count counters on it, look for other effects that might affect it. You can just look easily at it and be like, boom, it's done. But then it also changes it, if you have anything that gets better than that. Shogun's Palace has a once per turn effect. always just that's the dueling, just so you don't abuse it too many times. Faceless City for shapeshifters. You may search your deck for a copy. Again, you're not being forced to search your deck, but you can do it. The Deep says if it has 4 or more power. So after you play a minion here of 4 or more power, you may just try a minion with less power. If it has 4 or more power. Yeah, I'm not really sure why they added that little extra bit. If you play a minion here, if it has 4 or more power. You play a minion of. So of just became if it has. Maybe it's just, again, if it had, just simplified, maybe easier to read, understand. Maybe some people might not know what a minion of 4 power means. Event or Saloon for the steampunks after the space scores. Very simple. Workshop after the first time. Just again, a timing thing. So the first time you do this, you may play an extra action. Again, just kind of keep you from abusing it. Kind of a once per turn idea. The Nexus for time travelers is after the space scores. Jakar for the Vikings. So this has a couple of weird changes. I'll throw it. So it says after the first time you play a minion here, and as a you may. So before it says the first time you play, each turn a player plays a minion here. So it says after you play. So instead of saying the first time, it's after the first time. So it's not going to trigger until after it's played there. Timing. And then instead of a player, it says you. This is one thing that changes a bunch of player stuff into you doing it. So it says if you, in the box, you may draw it, otherwise return it. It says when action has 3 much power, they may play it into their hand. So it's basically the original is saying if a player does this, they may play it into their hand. Place it into their hand instead. And this is just kind of changing some of that stuff, saying a player, it's saying you are doing this, so you get to do the actions instead of a player, which could be anybody. It's specifically only saying you. And then also it changes the placing something from another area. Placing is when it goes from your hand onto the table. So if you're not doing that, now they're calling it drawing. So if I'm looking at something else, I'm drawing into my hand, I'm placing from my hand onto the table. Again, just making them terminologies sync up together. For Mook Sight, for the werewolves, this is after the first time. So again, it wants to wait till when you play this, now it activates. Then the Hall of Fame. Now this one I have a little incorrect text on the site. They did not have something that lines up with this ability. It's actually the same exact text is listed for the next card, so someone misprinted that. So I do not know what this card does different. It says the first minion you play during your turn gains +2 power on the turn. My best guess, it would say after the first minion you played, just like you've done some of the other ones, but I'm not for sure. It had this text instead, which obviously doesn't line up at all. And I don't think they changed the complete text. And this just says the winner on their next turn may choose to play an extra action. This functionally works the exact same, because the end of the last one says they may play an extra action on their next turn. And this just says, the winner, at this time, now you know when you do it. And I think it's a better way to word cards. Who, the winner, when, on their next turn, what they might do. Instead of the original way when it's like, who is the winner, are doing this, but when do they do it? Well, it's nice to know when they're doing it first. Like, oh, I know I'm doing this on my next turn, so I know, like, I'm not immediately playing this and being like, oh, whoops, the last part of the card said my next turn. Now I've already spoiled what I was going to play. Cool. Alright, so that was the end of the bases. Now we're going to look at the word Errata Packs. These should go a little bit quicker than the other ones, because lots of these, again, are just changing a couple words to be in line with everything else. Now, like the original the other Errata Pack, there's 70 faction cards in here. but there's only 47 different cards. So again, you're getting multiple some, like Ninja Acolyte shown here, or Tenacious Z, which is right behind it. You're getting probably like 4 copies of each. So yeah, just keep in mind that when it says 70 faction cards, you're like, oh, they changed a ton of characters. They changed half of them. So let's go ahead and look at this. So we have Get to the Choppa. It just says, if there's your only minion there, you may play an extra action. This is just actually a spelling change. The original says minion at there. That's all that was. That's why it's not in the functional thing, because it works the exact same. They just fixed the spelling or grammatical error. Jam Signal. The space's abilities are canceled. Just all players ignore the space's abilities. Just simplify or kind of change the text. It does the exact same thing. That's what all these cards are gonna be. They don't change. They generally don't change how the card was played. Just changing the wording to make it easier to read. Scout, which I didn't highlight anything because this one works out, just reads differently. So special, after the space scores, you may return a minion to your hand. It says, again, you may place this minion in your hand instead of the discard pile. So again, talking about the other ones. Placing is putting a card from your hand onto the table. So they wanted to get rid of that. And then, why mention the discard pile instead of the discard pile? Well, obviously, it's not. If it's going to your hand, it's not going to the discard pile. So you just get rid of that terminology. Makes the card look easier to read. We have Terraforming. For search your deck for a base and swap it with a base in play. So this one is an odd one because it is, and again, I think this has to do with like other card games. Like some of them, like if it ever has a period, you do the up to the period effect. That's effect A. Then you do the next part. That's effect B. And then you do the next part. Every time there's a period, that's a brand new effect. And anytime there's a period, something can be canceled. So the original one says search your deck for a base. Period. There could be something that could stop you at that point and make the rest of the card not happen, potentially. I don't know why, because the base deck always has base cards in it, unless for some reason it's the last card. But that's another thing altogether. But it says swap with a base in play. So now instead of the new one, it's just adding that as all one effect. Search your deck for a base and swap it. That's all one effect. That you have to do all of that before you do the next ability. Which then says shuffle the extra minion there. Which again just kind of changes, says on the new base. The only other thing that's a little bit odd, and I've noticed with a lot of the wordage erratas, is they got rid of shuffling the decks. And again, I think this just goes back to the global thing. If you ever look through a deck, you're supposed to reshuffle it. Unless it's a discard pile, which then it doesn't matter. So I think they just got rid of that shuffle the base deck rule off of there. Just again, let's clean up the card for something that you should. They just assume gamers can know how to do. Which is always kind of a funny idea with these because we're like, oh, we're going to do timing issues. It says after the base scores or at the beginning of your turn to like make things simpler for people. And then they get rid of the text like, oh, reminder to shuffle the deck. So it's interesting. Infinite non-loop, I highlight all this because the wordage changes a difference. It says choose an action, play an extra action, then you may put it back into your hand instead of the discard pile. So instead playing extra standard action, so you can't play an extra action, I guess. Then you may place it back into your hand instead of where it would normally go. And again, they got rid of the discard pile word, but also where it would normally go with me because what this would mean is if you stole a card from an opponent, normally if you played it, it would go back to them. Instead, you get to put it in your hand because it might not go back to the discard pile, or if it's something that might go to a different special pile or something. It's just eliminating saying not every card's gonna always go to the discard pile. It might go somewhere else. So this is just kind of taking care of that. For the mummy, for ancient Egyptians, oh, I didn't get rid of that small text on the top. Ongoing just became special, and this is one thing we talked at the very top of the video, is they're just changing some of these to this is your reaction effect. So after the base scores is a reaction versus an ongoing effect. Flying monkey, again, here's talking about combining some of these words together. So instead of after the scores, move the meaning to another base, then destroy this action. It combines as the one effect. You do the thing and then do this action at the exact same time, as opposed to two separate things, because there could be something that could happen in between that period and destroying the action. Bring down the walls. Ongoing became a special, because it says before the base scores. Dangerous grounds. Ongoing after another player instead of other players. Just says another player. Again, it's basically means the exact same thing. Just kind of trying to clarify it a little bit. Making contact, or make contact. This one, again, wordage changed a bunch. So, first of all, play on me. Now, the good changes from immediately, it goes from the middle of the card to the top of the card. So, first thing you want to do is play this on a minion. And that says, if you have any other cards in your hand, destroy this action. Otherwise, take control of this minion. So, the original one said, you only play this card with the last card in your hand. Which is, that word is functionally the same as if you have any other cards in your hand, destroy this action. But, now that only happens after you play it on a minion. So it's not saying, so you can have, so if I have 5 cards in my hand, the original one is just saying, oh, unless this is my last card, I can't play it. I have 4 other cards, I can't play this. This one's saying, I could go ahead and play this card on a minion. But if I have cards left in my hand now, I have to destroy this card immediately. Otherwise, I get to take control of a minion. Which is basically what the action ongoing says. Treat this minion as it is yours while this card is in play. But then they changed the ongoing. It says after this action leaves play, give this control minion to its owner. So it works the exact same. They're just kind of trying to change the I'm taking control of this minion. That's a one and done. That's not an ongoing effect, because once you control something, you control it. I don't need something to keep reminding me every turn I control a card. But it is saying ongoing is if this action leaves play, control this minion. Although that one I almost think should have almost been a special instead, like a reaction ability, but that's, not my call. Chaos Horde says, and this is what they changed this for the goblins that have coin flipping, kind of like some of the other stuff for when you play stuff. It says after you flip a coin. It's, do this ability after you check for this status effect first. Instead of when you flip a coin, just after you flip the coin, do it. Instead of when could mean, like in the middle of flipping a coin, just wait until after you flip the coin to do it. Same thing with Diviner. It says after the first time you flip a coin, instead of the first time you flip a coin. Goblin Recruiters after you flip a coin. Very, very minor changes. Again, that's the whole point of this pack. Is if you want your text to be like a little bit more accurate, pick up this pack. But it's not going to affect how the cards realistically work. In plain sight, just adds ongoing to it, so your minions are printed here to us, power not affected by opponent's cards. Just show that it's an always happening effect, although it's what it basically does. Just wants to have that keyword in there to trigger that. Return to the sea. After a base scores, instead of putting any number of minions in there, return any number of minions. And again, just for the discard pile part. Spreading the word. Choose a minion in play. So this actually adds an additional text in here. It says play up to 2 extra minions with the same name as the target minion. It just, again, it kind of clarifies that instead of it's who am I affecting, then what do I do? So I'm choosing a minion, and then now I can play minions with the same name, as opposed to, oh, I'm playing 2 minions with the same name, as that. So it just, you know, makes it a little bit simpler. There goes Tokyo. Um, if Gorgozilla is in play, destroy its base. Period. So it's just basing all their cards on it. So assuming that once you destroy a base, overall rules, everything on it's gone. So why add the extra all other cards on it? Just to kind of make that a little bit interesting. Or a little bit simplified. Not interesting. It is interesting, but anyhow. For overgrowth, this is another thing they added in here for the breakpoints. Kind of like when they said the scoring for the winners is have to check, and this is starting breakpoint of the base is 0. It's kind of like printed card text. The starting breakpoint is 0. So reduce the breakpoint of the base to 0. Now what's interesting here is this is kind of an interesting one because it is, I get where it's supposed to be just a wordage change, but it also somewhat seems like a functional change. So at the start of your turn, reduce the breakpoint of this base to 0. So if the breakpoint was 20 and it jumps to 0, that means boom, the space is done. That's the idea of it. But change it to the starting breakpoint of the base to 0 till the end of the turn. So during your turn, it changes it just during your turn. This is more of a functional change to me because now if I have something that says your breakpoint is increased by 2 and this card comes out, it doesn't matter, right? I can reduce it to 0, but I still have plus 2 breakpoint because my starting amount only became 0, so it doesn't break the base. And then on the same thing, it says till the end of the turn. So at the start of your turn, that's just immediately boom, replacing it to 0, checking it, and then now, is it 0? Nope. Then does it stay that way? Does it go away? Here it's saying nope, that stays that way throughout your entire turn. So again, I get the idea of like you're supposed to just assume breakpoint meant the starting breakpoint, or at the time when this came out, there wasn't ways to like increase the breakpoint, but now they're kind of changing that. It could change how the card works slightly. For Excalibur, we add special in there. Just to the boxes when this base scores. If the minion is King Arthur, gain +1 BP. So it says if minion is King Arthur, just wants you to hit triggers to check for that special thing. Galahad also has a special in there as well. Instead of ongoing before it scores because it's a base, check for that, which is what special is, just to check for them at certain times. Merlin's Library. Now, here's the only one that I could notice in here, is it changed the ors to capitals. Otherwise, I didn't notice anything different. Playing extra minion here, instead of comma, or remove one of your minions here, comma, or transfer this action. It just got rid of the comma and made capital ors. I think it's more of a grammatical and keeping in line with some of the other cards versus anything. Grave situation for Mad Scientist. If your minions here, it says after one of your minions are here. And again, this was sort of weird because we had stuff that was if came to when, and sometimes we added the word after something got played. Sometimes they changed back. If your minion here would be destroyed, return them to your hand instead of that. We've had other cards that went from if to when. So, not really sure on some of these. Complete the ritual became an ongoing. Kind of just help figure this out so you knew that it was ongoing at the start of your turn. And it says place all minions in action on the bottom of their owner's deck. Just says place all cards here. So just, I think again because we're adding other additional cards to the game like Titans, or if in the future they ever add other things, this kind of just collectively places all of them rather than having a, oh well, minions and actions also means doesn't mean Titans, right? Clearly, so a little bit there. Cthulhu's Chosen. Draw a Magnus card to give this minion. So it just says that you may draw a Magnus card. This minion gets +2 power until the end of your turn. Again, it gets rid of that period on there. So you may draw a Magnus card to give this minion. So you draw a Magnus card to then give this minion the +2 power. So drawing the Magnus card is triggering the +2 power. In the original one, it just says this minion gets +2 power till the end of your turn. That's what it specifically says, because special ends after Magnus card. Before the base cards, you may draw a +2 card. And it's saying, hey, this minion gets +2 power. So the idea is this came out, it's now a +5 character till the end of the turn. When it's supposed to mean that's all part of the special. So they just combined it into one sentence. For Aramis, for the Musketeers, once on your turn instead of during your turn. We talked about that before. Getting rid of during just to be on your turn. This is a spelling error. Players with a apostrophe before the S became after the S. Instead of a player's action versus all players' actions. Nothing else changed on that one. Again, this is something where like you could realistically like be like, I don't really need a reprint of this card, but if you're going to fix stuff anyhow, great. Jason for the Mighty Greeks has once per turn, just to kind of show you're not just the first time after you use this. Generally means a once per turn, because obviously you can only do a first once. And then it also adds the and in there to give your bonuses, just to make this all one ability. Alright, you have Spartan, has again a once per turn. Just instead of this, the first time you play an action on your turn. You know, just the one time. Which also is not bad, because it's the first. After the first action you play, after you play an action you may play. So it's just once per turn. You know, again, I'll put both these. They could somewhat be considered functional changes as well. Because after the first time you play an action means if I can somehow get a chance to play 3 cards, I can play 2 actions. The first time it's going to trigger this, or either one of these. But if it says once per turn, I could ignore it off the first one, and if it's my second action played, because I have like an extra action somewhere, I could technically trigger it at that time. So it does functionally change it slightly, because I could play it as an additional thing later. Because it doesn't say it has to be the first time, it just says. But again, because it's ongoing, I think it's kind of understood that it's like the first, like ongoing. As soon as you play it, it's going to trigger. Because it's not a talent, which I have to activate. So here, special becomes a talent. So instead of reactionary on your turn, saying if you have not played a minion on your turn, you may return this minion to your hand to play an extra minion here immediately. So instead of playing a minion on this base, a base is understood to be here. And then you can choose to activate that, so you don't have to do it. Woodland Helpers just becomes a standard action. I'm not sure why they changed standard action into from that as opposed to just action, because action could mean regular or extra action, or standard action means it has to be one of your regular gameplay terms, which again kind of falls in that realm of, I get this is maybe how it was intended to be, but it also seems like a functional change, because someone could argue playing an action could mean any time you play an action as opposed to just a standard action. For Rushing Fairy Tales, we have Bewitched. When this minion leaves play as opposed to if it leaves play. Just, yeah, that little bit of grammatical change in there. Doppelganger, special becomes ongoing. Instead of when, becomes after. So they did a lot of stuff where they changed when, if, and after, and that different timing. And I think kind of like ongoing, special, and talent. Like, someone wasn't consistent with when they should be used, and you're trying to like put these all in the same line. So not when this minion, it says after this minion's been played. So once it hits the table, it's after it's been played, or into the discard pile for this case. Genetic Shift. The only thing that changes on here is either each of your minions. Instead now it's each of your minions. This got rid of the word either, which I think is kind of an odd thing, because either means either or, which I get, which is what this is. Each of your minions gets this power, or choose one of your things. Now, they could have easily like made cards like this, like choosing effect. Dot, do this, and then second dot was do this. They could have done it like that as well. Would have also been a thing, but they didn't. I think it would have been, they would have had to rattle a lot of cards to do effects like that. Plus, it's also a thing, getting rid of the comma, adding the giant ore. For Black Sheep, after a minion becomes another minion. Again, this is one I could argue is a functional change. Because after a minion is played here, move this minion to another base. Which, again, it does make sense, I guess, because it says move this minion to after a minion is played here. This minion's already there, so another minion has to be played there for you to be able to move him. So again, it's just really clarifying that a minion instead of just another, so you know that it has to be someone else, even that's what it does read. Just helps you out. Counting Sheep, once per turn, just limiting the effect of it. I think, again, they just expected you not to use these multiple times. Escape hatch for Steampunks. When becomes if. So, if your minion here would be destroyed versus when. So, didn't we just have... Yes, this is what's weird. So, when this minion leaves play as opposed if it leaves play. So, inevitably, it's going to leave play. When it leaves play, whether it's destroyed, or returned to your hand, or whatever, when this leaves play, it's an action card, so maybe that's the difference. So when it leaves, this minion leaves play, you have to transfer it. But then if we flip back down to this one, it says if your minions here are destroyed, as opposed to when. So again, it's kind of odd when they decide to change somewhere when your minions are destroyed versus if. The other card says when this happens, your minions destroyed or returned, this happens. And this one's now saying if they're destroyed. So I'm not really sure why they went one to the other on some of the things, and why they don't have consistency there. But again, that's not my point to try and figure out what they are doing, just this is what they had. Ornate Dome. Just added actions. It says on this base. It says play on a base, destroy all other players' actions played here. Instead of played here, it's on this base. And again, this is one of the things that is weird because we had another card way back where it said on this base became here. If I can, sorry for the quick flip here. See if I can find that. I thought it was one of the first couple we had. Maybe it wasn't in this set. Nope. Must have been in one of the other ones. But yeah, we've had that before too, where it's changed cards here versus on the base. Like you're supposed to assume that a card here means this base, and then this one changes it. So maybe sometimes it has to go with being on a minion, printed on a minion versus being printed on an action. Maybe all the minions say one thing, all the actions say the other, and that's why they change them. Awesome Guy. Players' cards versus by other players. By other players, just by their cards. Just a clarification, meaning the player themselves can't do anything, but it's their cards. Again, kind of almost kind of a dumb thing to have to like put on there just so that people understood. But someone, again, you'd have someone I'm sure would sit there and argue, be like, well, it's not me destroying it, it's my card. You know, so you got that. For teams, we have Brain. You're playing extra action. It says another action. Changing another to extra, just so we know that extra is the terminology for that. Time is fleeting. This becomes a special. Play after a base scores. So it just adds it, just so you know it's something to specifically look for when it's supposed to happen. Marking territory. At the start of your turn, if you have more total power here than each other player, reduce this base's breakpoint until 0 till the end of the turn. It's interesting, I just noticed they changed the 0 from a word to a number, because I think it's printed on a card versus drawing. But yeah, it's also stating that the original one, start of your turn would mean it's not telling you when it stops. So you'd be like, I'm going at the start of your turn. You'd assume that it's gonna drop it to 0, as much like the Kazu plant one, the overgrowth plant. At the beginning of the turn, it dropped to 0, and then is that okay? Hit 0, does anything happen? Nope. Then it goes back to normal. Nope. It wants it to last till the end of the turn. And then beginning of your next turn, it's going to start again. But that also means it only happens during your turn. So it's, again, someone can argue it could be a potential functional thing, because someone might argue, it's ongoing at the start of your turn. This happens, but then it's like, okay, so when does it end? It doesn't tell me when it ends. So as long as this is on, it's like you could be like, the trigger of it is at the start of my turn. So I play this, nothing happens at the beginning of my next turn. It becomes 0, and then now it stays that way forever. Nope, it's only that way during my turns, but it doesn't tell you when it shuts off. So someone could argue that it never shuts off, because it's an ongoing ability. Ongoing abilities are supposed to always happen. Archmage ongoing just becomes a talent, so you may play an extra action each of your turns. Instead, just activate your talent to play an extra action. And I think the global rules, again, are talents can only be used once, so you don't have to say, like, one time or anything like that. For Artemis, again, this is the same as the other Artemises, the World Champs one, so they're just changing it. We have a couple of these. Bewitch changes from if to when. Mummy has a special. Stoneford, which is from the Vigilantes version, is in the Rebalance factions. That's why we haven't seen it before. But it says, instead of placing it into your hand, just drawing it, then chasing place to draw. Tenacious Z has zombies, says special on your turn instead of during your turn. And that's about it there. And I think this is the last one. Just once during your turn, you may place them in here from your discard pile instead of your hand. Just ideas. I believe they assume ongoing means you can only do it once, but it doesn't really specify that. So again, potential functional change. So that is what we have there. So let's smash up the Errata Packs. So yeah, just as a last overview of this, the functional packs are going to have a lot of changes to the actual gameplay. Bases are kind of like mix in between, and then the wording is more or less just making everything in line. Like I said, there's a couple in there that if you have newer players or players that aren't used to card games or hard to understand, it might be worth picking up just to keep it easier for them to understand some of the terminology. But if you have a good concept on what certain, like, at the end of the card or things should only be once in play, you could probably skip that stuff for now. But yeah, this is what we have. So in case you were curious on what changes all of them, like I said, they do have the Rebalance factions, which is the only one they have up on their site right now, I think. Might be Bear Cavalry. They have other ones. I didn't look too hard into it, because they didn't have the list of what text changed on any of them. So I'd have to actually, like, buy them, have them shipped to me, and then check them that way. Which I am debating on personally right now, if I'm going to order them on print on demand, or I can have actual reprints of every single set for the one of their Kickstarters, as every single card reprinted officially versus the print on demand way. But the thing is, again, you're getting your 54 cards here, plus your 70 cards on the other one, plus the 28. So you're getting like 200 some cards out of 2,000 some cards. It's whether I want to have everything reprinted or not. That's me personally. I'm debating on which way to go with that. Um, you know, so there we go. All right, if you guys have any questions, comments, hit me up. I will try and answer them. It's a last minute thing. I'm not involved with Smash Up or AEGE um, or Forge Fire at all. I will put a link in the description to Forge Fire if you want to check out their stuff. See you guys later. Bye.